They say that the quietest towns hold the darkest secrets. For 12 years, I believed I lived in a world where secrets didn't exist, or at least not in my home. My name is Elena, and if you had asked anyone in our tight-knit community of Oak Ridge about my marriage to David, they would have told you we were the gold standard. We were the couple people looked at when they wanted to believe true love lasted. David was a respected high school principal, a man who dedicated his life to shaping the future of young minds. I ran a successful local bakery, a place filled with the scent of cinnamon and fresh bread, where people gathered to share gossip and laughter. We had a beautiful 7-year-old daughter named Lily, a house with a perfectly manicured lawn, and a life that seemed completely secure. But perfection is a fragile glass structure. It only takes one hidden flaw, one sharp blow, for the entire thing to shatter into a million jagged pieces. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when the first crack appeared. The kind of night where the wind howls against the window panes, making you feel grateful for the warmth inside. David was late coming home from a school board meeting, which wasn't unusual. He was a dedicated man, often staying behind to finish paperwork or counsel troubled students. Lily was fast asleep upstairs, her small arms wrapped around her favorite stuffed bear. I was sitting on the living room sofa, a warm cup of chamomile tea cradled in my hands, waiting for the sound of his car tires pulling into the gravel driveway. When he finally walked through the front door, he looked exhausted. His dark hair was slightly damp from the rain, and his shoulders slumped under the weight of his coat. He gave me a tired smile, kissed my forehead, and apologized for the delay. "The meeting ran incredibly long, honey," he said, sighing as he untied his shoes. "The budget cuts are causing a lot of stress for everyone. I'm going to take a quick shower and head straight to bed." "Of course, David. Take your time. Do you want me to heat up some dinner?" I asked, setting my tea down. "No, thank you. I grabbed a quick bite at the district office," he replied, already walking toward the stairs. As he walked up, he left his leather briefcase and his phone on the kitchen counter. For 12 years, I had never, not even once, felt the urge to look through my husband's things. Trust wasn't just a word to us. It was the foundation of everything we built. But that night, an unsettling feeling crept into my chest. It wasn't a sudden burst of suspicion, but rather a quiet, cold whisper in the back of my mind. A woman's intuition is a powerful, terrifying thing. It senses danger long before the mind can put it into words. Just as I was about to turn off the kitchen light, his phone buzzed on the counter. The screen illuminated the darkened room. It was a text message. I walked over, intending to just glance at it in case it was an emergency from the school. The message was from an unsaved number. It read, "Thank you for tonight. Counting down the hours until we can be together again without having to hide. Safe travels home, my love." My breath caught in my throat. The room suddenly felt incredibly cold, and the walls seemed to press in on me. I stood frozen, staring at the glowing screen until it went dark again. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My love? Who could possibly be sending my husband a message like that? Was it a mistake? A wrong number? I desperately tried to find a logical explanation. I wanted to believe it was a prank, or perhaps a message meant for someone else that had somehow crossed lines. But deep down, the heavy sinking feeling in my stomach told me the truth. I reached out with a trembling hand and picked up the phone. I knew his passcode. It was our daughter's birthday. My fingers shook so violently I entered it wrong the first time. On the second attempt, the phone clicked open. I opened the messaging app, and what I found inside tore my world completely apart. There were dozens of messages, stretching back months. Photos, plans for secret weekend getaways, words of deep affection and passion that he hadn't spoken to me in years. The other person wasn't a stranger. As I scrolled through the messages, looking for a name, I found a self-taken photo sent by the contact. It was Sarah. Sarah was the vice principal at David's school. More than that, she was someone I considered a close friend. She had sat at our dinner table. She had played with my daughter in our backyard. She had looked me in the eyes, smiled, and thanked me for my hospitality, all while secretly holding my husband's hand under the cover of darkness. The betrayal didn't just hurt. It completely paralyzed me. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter to keep from collapsing onto the floor. The man I loved, the man I had built a life with, was living a double life. Every smile, every "I love you," every late night at the office. It was all a beautifully constructed lie. I looked up at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of the shower running upstairs. The man I thought I knew was up there, washing away the evidence of his deceit. I wanted to run up the stairs, throw the phone in his face, and scream until my voice cracked. I wanted to wake up the neighbors, to show everyone the monster hiding behind the respectable principal's mask. But as I stood there in the quiet kitchen, the initial shock began to transform. The burning heat of anger cooled into a freezing, sharp clarity. If I confronted him right now, what would happen? He would deny it. He would delete the evidence. He would call me crazy, paranoid, and insecure. In a town like Oak Ridge, where he was a pillar of the community, people would believe him over me. He would use his charm to twist the narrative, leaving me with nothing but broken pieces and a shattered reputation. No, I couldn't just react. I needed to act. I carefully put the phone back exactly where he had left it, ensuring the screen was clean and the angle was identical. I walked back to the living room, sat down on the sofa, and picked up my cup of tea. My hands were no longer shaking. A strange, quiet determination took over. When David came downstairs a few minutes later, wearing his comfortable gray sweatpants and smelling of fresh soap, he looked at me and smiled. "Everything okay? Elena? You look a bit pale." I looked directly into the eyes of the man who had just broken my heart, forced a calm, loving smile onto my face, and said, "I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Let's go to bed." As we lay in the dark that night, side by side, the space between us felt like an endless ocean. He fell asleep within minutes, his breathing slow and steady. But I stayed awake, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, realizing that the life I knew was officially over. A new chapter had begun, and this time I was the one who would control the script. The next morning arrived with a deceptive brightness. The sun filtered through the kitchen windows, casting a warm glow over the breakfast table as if nothing had changed. I watched David interact with our daughter, Lily. He helped her pour her cereal, laughed at her silly jokes, and kissed the top of her head before she gathered her backpack for school. To anyone looking through the window, we were the definition of a happy family. But watching him now felt like watching a stranger wearing my husband's skin. Every gesture felt practiced, every laugh hollow. I realized then how deeply the deceit ran. He wasn't just lying to me. He was lying to everyone around him with terrifying ease. After David left for the school with Lily, the quietness of the house became suffocating. I didn't open the bakery that day. I called my assistant and told her I was coming down with a sudden illness and needed 24 hours to rest. It wasn't a complete lie. I was sick, but not with a virus. I was sick with the realization of how deeply I had been betrayed. I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. I knew that if I wanted to protect myself and my daughter, I couldn't rely on emotion. Emotion makes you weak. It makes you make mistakes. I needed a clear, calculated strategy. In our state, asset division and custody battles were heavily influenced by conduct, but more than the legalities, I wanted justice. I wanted the truth to be revealed in a way that he could never deny, cover up, or recover from. First, I needed hard evidence. The text messages I saw on his phone were a start, but they weren't enough. He could easily delete them, claim his phone was hacked, or say it was a harmless flirtation that never went further. I needed undeniable proof of their meetings, their shared finances, and the extent of their betrayal. I decided to hire a professional. I didn't want to risk following him myself and getting caught. I looked up a private investigator located 2 towns away, someone with no ties to Oak Ridge. His name was Arthur, a retired detective with a reputation for being thorough and completely discreet. I met Arthur later that afternoon in a quiet diner off the main highway. The atmosphere was dim, smelling of old coffee and fried food, a stark contrast to my bright, welcoming bakery. I laid out everything I knew, keeping my voice steady, refusing to shed a single tear in front of a stranger. Arthur listened intently, nodding as he took notes. "It's a classic story, Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice low and sympathetic. "But you're doing the right thing by staying calm. If you confront him now, you lose the upper hand. I'll need a few weeks. I'll track his movements outside of school hours, check his financial trails if possible, and get the photographic evidence you need for court." "I don't just want this for court, Arthur," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "I want the truth documented so clearly that no one in our town can ever doubt it." He gave a slow nod. "Understood. I'll begin immediately." Over the next 3 weeks, living in that house became a psychological war. Every single day was a test of my willpower. I had to cook his favorite dinners, listen to him complain about his stressful days at school, and even endure his occasional affection. There were nights when he would reach out to hold my hand while we watched television, and a bolt of pure electricity would run through me. Not of love, but of intense revulsion. I had to force myself not to pull away, to keep my muscles relaxed, to play the role of the dutiful, unsuspecting wife. Meanwhile, I watched him carefully. I noticed the subtle shifts in his behavior that I had been blind to before. The way he would suddenly take his phone into the bathroom when it rang. The way he would smile at a text message while pretending to read an educational journal. The way he suddenly started buying new cologne and paying extra attention to his appearance. It was all there, right in front of me, shining like a neon sign. I marveled at how love can make a person completely blind to the obvious. One afternoon, Sarah actually came by the bakery. She walked in with her usual bright, bubbly energy, the bell above the door jingling cheerfully.
"Elena."
"Oh, thank goodness you're open," she said, leaning over the counter. "I desperately need a dozen of your chocolate chip cookies for the staff meeting tomorrow. David mentioned you made a fresh batch." I looked at her face, the flawless makeup, the friendly smile, the eyes that had looked at my husband with desire. A wave of fury surged within me, so strong I felt a metallic taste in my mouth. I wanted to reach across the counter and rip the smile right off her face. But instead, I breathed in the scent of vanilla and sugar in the air, letting it ground me. "Of course, Sarah," I said, my voice smooth and welcoming. I began packing the cookies into a neat cardboard box. "David always speaks so highly of how hard you work at the school. It must be exhausting managing everything together." She didn't even blink. "Oh, you know us, we make a great team. David is a wonderful partner to work with. You're a very lucky woman, Elena." "I know exactly how lucky I am," I replied, handing her the box with a polite smile. "Enjoy the cookies." As she walked out of the bakery, I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. A great team. They truly believed they were invincible. They believed they were smarter than everyone else, playing their little game right under my nose, thinking I was too foolish to ever notice. They enjoyed the thrill of the deception just as much as the affair itself. That evening, I received an encrypted email from Arthur. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it on my laptop while David was out doing a late-night gym session. The email contained a file full of photographs. There they were, pictures of David and Sarah walking hand in hand through a park in the next city. Pictures of them sharing an intimate dinner at a secluded restaurant. And most damning of all, pictures of them entering a boutique hotel together, their arms wrapped around each other's waists. Along with the photos, Arthur had compiled a financial report showing that David had opened a secret credit card account, spending thousands of dollars on expensive gifts, jewelry, and luxury hotel rooms, all using funds that belonged to our family's future. I sat alone in the dark room, the glow of the screen illuminating the undeniable truth. The evidence was absolute. It was devastating, but it was also liberating. The final piece of doubt was gone. I closed the laptop and took a deep, steadying breath. The time for mourning my marriage was over. They had built their happiness on the foundation of my humiliation. Now it was time to design a stage where their true characters would be revealed to the entire world. With the evidence safely stored on a secure, encrypted drive, I began the next phase of my plan. I didn't want a messy public screaming match, nor did I want a quiet divorce where they could simply slide into a public relationship after the dust settled. pretending they had only found love after our separation. No, their betrayal was public in its disrespect to my life and my daughter's stability. Therefore, their exposure needed to match the scale of their deception. I spent the next week consulting with a top-tier divorce attorney in the city, a sharp woman named Clara who specialized in high-asset cases involving hidden accounts. When I showed her the dossier compiled by Arthur, Clara let out a low whistle. "This is incredibly comprehensive, Elena," Clara said, reviewing the financial statements. "Your husband has been diverting marital assets to fund this relationship. In court, this gives us an enormous advantage regarding property division and alimony. But more importantly, the custody arrangement for Lily looks very favorable for you. He spent more time conducting an illicit affair than being a present parent." "I want full custody, Clara," I said firmly. "I don't want Lily growing up around a woman who helped destroy her family, thinking that sort of behavior is acceptable." "We will get it," Clara assured me. "But tell me, when do you want me to serve him the papers? We can do it quietly at his office." I smiled, a cold, humorless expression. "No, not quietly, and not at his office. I have a much better venue in mind." Every year, the Oak Ridge community held its annual Founders Gala. It was the biggest social event of the year, held in the beautifully restored historic town hall. Everyone who was anyone attended. Local business owners, the mayor, the entire school district board, and all of our neighbors. David, as the high school principal, was always a prominent figure at the event. In fact, this year, he was scheduled to give the keynote speech about family values and community integration. The irony was almost poetic. He was going to stand on a stage in front of hundreds of people and lecture them on moral integrity, while his mistress sat in the audience, cheering him on. I decided that the Founders Gala, exactly 2 weeks away, would be the setting for their uncovering. To ensure everything went perfectly, I had to maintain my performance at home. It became a grueling test of endurance. Every morning I made him coffee. Every evening I asked about his day. I even allowed him to help me choose my dress for the gala. He picked out a stunning, deep crimson gown. "You'll look absolutely beautiful in this, Elena," he had said, holding the fabric up against me. "The most beautiful woman in the room." "Thank you, David," I whispered, holding back the urge to spit in his face. "I want to make sure it's an evening no one will ever forget." As the days crept closer to the gala, I began to notice a shift in David and Sarah's behavior. They were getting careless. Because I had been so compliant, so completely unsuspecting, they assumed they were entirely safe. I intercepted another text on his phone one evening while he was sleeping. They were planning a secret celebration right after the gala, intending to slip away early to a cabin he had rented using his hidden credit card. They thought they were planning a romantic escape. In reality, they were walking straight into a trap of their own making. I also discovered something else during my preparation. David had been utilizing school district funds to cover some of their travel expenses, labeling them as educational conferences that Sarah also attended. This wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage anymore. It was financial misconduct involving public resources. I quietly forwarded that specific financial data to an anonymous tip line for the school board's auditing committee, ensuring it would arrive on the desk of the board president the morning after the gala. I wanted to make sure that when he fell, there would be no safety net to catch him. 2 days before the event, I paid a visit to the catering team managing the gala. The coordinator, Marcus, was a regular customer at my bakery.
"Elena,
"What can I do for you?" Marcus asked warmly. "Are you checking in on the dessert arrangements?" "Actually, Marcus, I have a special surprise planned for David," I said, putting on an enthusiastic, loving wife persona. "As you know, he's giving the keynote speech. I've prepared a special digital slideshow of our years together, our family, and his work in the community to project on the big screens right before he goes up. I want it to be a complete surprise for him." Marcus beamed. "Oh, that's incredibly sweet of you, Elena. Of course, we can set that up. Just give the flash drive to our tech guy, Leo, before the event starts. He'll cue it up to play right after the mayor introduces David." "Thank you so much, Marcus. Please keep it a secret." I want to see the look on his face when it plays, I said, my heart pounding with anticipation. My lips are sealed, he promised. I walked out of the hall into the crisp autumn air, feeling a profound sense of calmness. The storm was gathered. The lightning was bottled up, ready to strike. I had spent weeks living in a prison of silence, swallowing my anger, enduring the touch of a liar, and watching my life be dismantled behind my back. But the stage was set, the audience was booked, and the main actors had no idea the script had been rewritten. The night of the Founders Gala arrived. The historic town hall was transformed into a dazzling display of crystal chandeliers, white linen tables, and elegant floral arrangements. The room was packed with over 200 of Oak Ridge's most prominent citizens, all dressed in tuxedos and evening gowns. The hum of laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the soft strains of a live jazz quartet filled the air. David looked exceptionally handsome in his tailored black tuxedo. He walked through the crowd with an easy confidence, shaking hands, laughing with school board members, and accepting compliments on his leadership. I walked by his side in my crimson gown, my posture perfect, a serene smile fixed on my face. To anyone watching, we were the ultimate power couple. As we made our rounds, we crossed paths with Sarah. She was wearing a sparkling emerald dress that caught the light with every movement.
David, Elena.
You both look magnificent, Sarah said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness as she took a sip of her champagne. Thank you, Sarah, David replied, his voice smooth, though I noticed the subtle, brief glance he cast toward her necklace. A gold pendant I now knew he had bought with our family savings. Are you ready for the board presentation next week? Completely ready. We've prepared everything perfectly, she said, giving him a knowing smile that made my blood run cold. I'm sure you have, I interjected, stepping slightly closer to David and wrapping my arm tightly around his. David has told me all about how much effort the two of you put into your joint projects. It's truly remarkable how much time you spend together. Sarah's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of unease passing through her eyes before she recovered. Well, teamwork makes the dream work, Elena. Exactly, I said, raising my glass to her. To teamwork. An hour later, the chime of a silver spoon against a crystal glass signaled that it was time for the main event. The guests took their seats at the round tables surrounding the main stage. David and I were seated at the head table, directly in front of the massive projection screen used for presentations. Sarah was seated just 2 tables away, well within my line of sight. The mayor of Oak Ridge walked up to the podium, adjusting the microphone. The room fell quiet. Good evening, everyone, the mayor announced, his voice booming through the speakers. Tonight, as we celebrate the foundation of our wonderful town, it is my distinct honor to introduce a man who embodies the very values we hold dear. A man of integrity, dedication, and unwavering commitment to our families and our youth. Please welcome our high school principal, David Vance. The room erupted into applause. David stood up, buttoning his jacket, a proud, triumphant smile on his face. He turned to me, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Wish me luck, honey." "You don't need luck, David," I whispered back. "You're going to get exactly what you deserve." As he walked up the stairs to the stage, the applause began to die down. But before he could reach the podium, the lights in the main hall suddenly dimmed. The large projection screen behind the podium flickered to life. David paused, looking confused. He turned around to look at the screen, assuming it was a technical glitch or perhaps a tribute presentation he hadn't been informed about. The title screen appeared in large, elegant font, David Vance, A Life Built on Commitment. A soft, romantic instrumental music track began to play through the house speakers. The first few slides showed old photos of us, our wedding day, the birth of Lily, family vacations. The audience let out a collective, soft ah. I looked over at David. His posture relaxed, a soft, slightly arrogant smile returning to his face. He thought I had put together a beautiful tribute to surprise him. He even looked down at me from the stage and blew me a silent kiss. Then the music stopped abruptly. The screen went completely black for 3 long seconds. When it flickered back on, the romantic photos were gone. In their place was a high-resolution, crystal-clear photograph of David and Sarah standing outside the boutique hotel, their arms wrapped around each other, sharing a passionate embrace. A sharp, audible gasp echoed through the entire hall. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Before anyone could comprehend what they were seeing, the next slide appeared. It was a screenshot of their text messages, blown up so large that everyone in the back of the room could read every single word. "Thank you for tonight. Counting down the hours until we can be together again without having to hide. Safe travels home, my love." Then came another photo, David buying the gold pendant at the jewelry store, followed immediately by a picture of Sarah wearing that exact same pendant at a restaurant table across from him. Slide after slide, the evidence displayed itself with merciless clarity. Photos of their secret getaways, detailed bank statements highlighting the hidden credit card expenditures, and even the receipts for the cabin they had booked for later that very evening. The room transformed from a celebration into a courtroom of public opinion. I looked around. The school board members were staring at the screen with mouths wide open, their faces pale with shock. The mayor looked completely horrified. I looked at Sarah. The color had completely drained from her face. She looked as if she had been turned to stone, her eyes wide with terror as she realized that every single person in the room was now turning around to look at her. She tried to stand up, to run out of the hall, but her legs seemed to fail her, and she sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands as whispers began to erupt like wildfire through the tables. And then I looked at David. He was standing in the center of the stage, frozen under the bright spotlight. The proud, confident principal was completely gone. His face was a mask of sheer panic and utter humiliation. He looked at the massive screen displaying his deepest, darkest secrets to the entire town, then slowly turned his head to look down at me. I stood up from my seat, smoothing down my crimson gown. I didn't look angry. I didn't look sad. I looked completely at peace. I picked up my purse, walked to the edge of the stage, and looked up at him. The entire room fell dead silent again, every eye fixed on me, waiting for the explosion. But I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. In a clear, steady voice that echoed beautifully in the quiet hall, I said, "Your speech was supposed to be about family values, David. I just wanted to make sure you had the right visual aids. The divorce papers are on our kitchen counter. Don't bother coming home." With that, I turned around and walked down the center aisle of the town hall. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea, their faces filled with a mixture of awe, respect, and utter shock. I held my head high, the sound of my heels clicking against the hardwood floor the only noise in the massive room. I pushed open the double doors of the town hall and walked out into the cool night air. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe. The fallout from that night was swift, absolute, and unyielding. In a small town like Oak Ridge, a scandal of that magnitude doesn't just fade away. It completely reshapes the landscape. By the next morning, the video recordings of the gala presentation had already spread through social media channels. David's reputation, which he had spent decades carefully building, was demolished in less than 5 minutes. The school board held an emergency meeting first thing Monday morning. With the evidence of his financial misconduct regarding district funds added to the public disgrace, David was summarily fired from his position as principal. Sarah was dismissed alongside him. They were both banned from the school grounds. Their careers in education effectively ended. David tried to call me dozens of times, sending desperate text messages begging for a chance to explain, a chance to apologize, a chance to save his shared custody. I didn't answer a single call. I blocked his number and directed all communication through Clara, my attorney. When he finally realized I wouldn't speak to him, he came by the house while I was out, packing his things in garbage bags and leaving the keys on the kitchen counter just as I had instructed. The divorce proceedings were remarkably fast. Faced with undeniable photographic and financial evidence, David had no leverage. Clara secured full physical custody of Lily for me, with David receiving only limited, supervised visitation. The court ordered him to repay every single cent he had diverted from our marital accounts, and I was awarded the house, the bakery, and a significant portion of his retirement funds. Sarah left Oak Ridge within a week, unable to face the glaring eyes and icy whispers of the townspeople whenever she stepped outside. She moved to a city several hours away, starting over with a tarnished record and a broken reputation. David followed her shortly after, stripped of his status, his money, and his pride. They had wanted to be together without hiding, and now they had exactly what they desired, but it had cost them everything else they valued. As for me, the town's reaction surprised me the most. I had expected pity, awkward silences, or judgment. Instead, I was met with an outpouring of support. The day I reopened the bakery, there was a line stretching down the block. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers came in not to pry, but to buy my pastries, offer warm hugs, and express their admiration for my strength. They didn't see a victim. They saw a woman who had stood up for her dignity with unparalleled grace and power. Months passed, and the pain of the betrayal began to fade, replaced by a deep, beautiful sense of peace. One Saturday afternoon, I stood in the backyard watching Lily chase a yellow butterfly through the grass. Her laughter was bright, pure, and untainted by the storm we had passed through. She was safe, she was happy, and she was growing up in a home filled with genuine love, not beautifully packaged lies. I sat down on the porch steps, a warm cup of tea in my hands, looking out at the horizon. I realized then that revenge isn't about matches and fire. It's not about destroying someone out of blind rage. True revenge is about taking control of your own narrative. It's about refusing to let someone else's deceit define your worth. David and Sarah thought they were playing a clever game, believing that my love made me weak and blind. They forgot that the same love that makes a person gentle also makes them fiercely protective of their boundaries and their children. By choosing to stay calm, collect the truth, and reveal it on my own terms, I didn't just expose their darkness. I reclaimed my light. Life has a beautiful way of balancing the scales. The truth can be buried, twisted, or hidden behind elegant masks, but it can never be destroyed. And when it finally emerges, it has the power to wash away the illusions, leaving behind only what is real, strong, and enduring. As I watched Lily laugh, I smiled, knowing that the perfect picture we had now wasn't a fragile glass structure anymore. It was real, it was ours, and it could never be broken again.